Ladies and gentlemen, this episode will feature sensitive topics in regards to PTSD, stress, and firefighter-related suicides. Please listen with caution if you struggle with any or all of these issues. Enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, another episode of Into the Fire podcast is here, and it begins now. And now, your host, Eric Legikis and Sean Fitzpatrick.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Into the Fire podcast. I'm your host, Eric Legikis, and I am not with Sean Fitzpatrick tonight. Sean is still away on military leave somewhere in this world. I don't know where he's at, but he's not here. So it is just me for now, ladies and gentlemen. But I welcome you to the show. And I'm not going to talk as long as we normally do because it is myself today, but I'm still going to talk. And today actually has a topic that is near and dear to my heart right now because I'm trying to work on something with the fire department regarding this issue and trying to really, I guess you can say, trying to really get this into something and bring some awareness to the world when it comes to this. And I'm specifically talking about PTSD, stress, and more importantly, firefighter-related suicides. And right now, suicide is such a taboo topic. No one wants to talk about it. They want to kind of just keep it bottled up in the back and not bring it up. But I'm sorry, but it has to be talked about. And today is June 27th. You guys will hear this episode tomorrow on June 28th, but today's June 27th. And the reason I wanted to do the podcast specifically on today's date is because today is PTSD Awareness Day. Now, there is a whole month for it, but today is an actual day where we are truly trying to bring awareness to PTSD. Not just in the fire service, but all over. PTSD for first responders, for military. Because a lot of people really associate PTSD with military coming back overseas. And it is very, very prominent and very, very a real thing when it comes to veterans coming back from war. But a lot of people do forget that back here, police, fire, EMS, and even dispatchers, we have PTSD problems. The stuff that we see cannot be unseen. And that is the truth of the matter. We cannot unsee the things that we see in our field. So today is going to be a very, I don't want to say dark or deep, but today is definitely going to be an episode where we are going to dive in a little bit. And if you have any issues with PTSD or work stress and anxiety regarding this type of stuff, just my only thing is heed with caution, because I'm speaking on this, but I'm also speaking on this from experience. So this is going to be a challenging episode for myself too, because I think one of the biggest ways to get past this type of stuff personally is to be transparent. And this episode, I promise that I will be transparent. There's things that I'm going to do or things that I'm going to say in this episode that not many people know, because I feel the best way to reach out and the best way to really talk about this is to tell your own life story, to tell the things that you have been through, because there might be people out there that can relate to that don't necessarily want to tell anybody, or they don't really feel comfortable going to tell someone. So I'm going to be transparent, and I'm not going to lie to you. It's probably going to be slightly hard on me, just a little bit here, just because even though some of this stuff is old and hasn't happened to me in a long time, it is it's still very fresh, and especially in my mind. But we're going to kind of dive in a little bit more too, and we're going to talk about a couple things, how we could prevent it, how we could basically also, like, how could we see signs of someone that's going through this beforehand? Because I think that's the biggest thing, especially in the fire service. We work with our guys, whatever you're at, if it's 24-hour shifts, 48-hour shifts, you're working with these people every single day, and you know their mannerisms, you know how they're acting, you know if they are acting a little strange or a little off. If they're normally like cheery and bubbly and they come in and they're just kind of standoffish and they don't want to be around you, that's something you got to be worried about. And a lot of guys in the fire service don't really know how to recognize that. And that is the absolute truth. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. So we're gonna really dive into this today and really talk about it. And I hope this is something that can help people. I hope this is something that's informative. I know it's not something that a lot of people want to talk about, but like I said, again, it's something that we need to talk about. But so you guys, PTSD, a lot of people know it's post-traumatic stress disorder. If you don't know, there you go. And like I said before, it's associated with a lot of soldiers coming home from war. But firefighters, first responders, EMS, we deal with this too, because we see things that you don't want to see. We see things, like, children being sick or injured or caught in a fire or whatever it may be. We see elderly people losing their loved ones right in front of our eyes, and it's not the easiest thing to do. It's not the easiest thing to see, no matter if you're a brand new guy or whether you're a 20-year veteran of the fire service. It's not easy to see. It never does get easy, and I'm sorry to say that. I don't think this is really ruining anything, but we, unfortunately, in the fire service, and probably even first responder in general, we tend to deal with things with laughter. We don't want to deal with it, so we tend to bottle it up, and we deal with it with joking, and we deal with laughter, and that's something that we also need to figure out. We need to change that, because we can't. We need to change the dynamic of how we deal with these things, and unfortunately, that's part of our nature. It's part of our business's nature, and that's something that we've been dealing with for a very, very long time. So some risk factors of PTSD. Let's kind of talk about some of them, and I can relate to some of these as well. And some of the risk factors, and there's some guys at my fire department in general that are extremely young, came to doing this pretty much right out of high school, and beginning your fire service career at a very young age. That's a huge risk factor, because you think about it. And this kind of goes out to all you officers or senior firefighter guys. Just think about you have an 18-year-old that just came in from high school, and they probably haven't seen anything that we see in the fire service. They came out from doing their dances and their high school football games and basketball games and whatever, like part-time job, whatever else they were doing. And all of a sudden they come into the fire service and have the potential on their first day to have a call where they may see somebody at their worst, whether it's, someone that's dying of a cardiac arrest or a child that's, burned in a fire or whatever it may be. That's the reality of it. And they're coming out of something where they mentally probably don't know what they're getting themselves into. I came in at a very young age. I came in at 19, and I think it wasn't until probably wasn't until I was 20 years old is when I finally really got to see my first real traumatic call, and that it bothered me. But I also saw how other guys dealt with it, and a lot of guys dealt with it by just kind of pushing it off to the side, and they didn't really talk about it. So that's kind of what I did. I never really talked about it. And throughout my career, the things that I have seen, I dealt with it in that way. I dealt with it as I bottled it up. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to, look weak in front of anybody, because after all, we're firefighters. We're the big burly firefighter. We're the heroes. We go in to save the day. And, last thing I wanted to do is look stupid in front of somebody by, talking about my feelings. And because that was the status quo. That was the norm that I knew, because no one really talked about it. So you have to look at these young firefighters that are coming in at a really young age, and we have to kind of, I'm sorry to say, we have to kind of protect them. We don't have to coddle them, but we have to kind of protect them, because you need to look out for something like that. So whenever we have a traumatic call at our fire department, and a young firefighter, or even a probie that's never even worked in this field before, I try to reach out. I know there's a couple other people on the fire department that actually try to reach out as well, just to kind of be like, hey, if you need anything, we're here to talk. But I think that's imperative. But some of the other risk factors, underlying mental health issues, close proximity to death. Sorry. I had something like that recently, not with myself, but not recently, actually. It's been a little while ago. But I had something like that with my brother, and here I am in this fire service where I'm, I can go to a fire call, or I can go to a trauma call, and I'm a trauma junkie, and I can see things that I'm just like, okay, wow, that's interesting, but it really doesn't really hit until it hits home, and that's what I wasn't prepared for. I wasn't prepared for something to hit so close to home for me, had that close proximity of death. And luckily my brother survived, but that for a while that actually traumatized me, because I could no longer see trauma the same way. I can deal with the patient, I can go and help that patient, do whatever I need to do, but I never could see trauma the same way again. And I think it was because of that accident, because there was too much of a close proximity to my own life. And I never dealt with that either. I kind of just let that bottle up, and like if I had a call, I dealt with it at the time, but it was hard to deal with, because I always disassociated personal feelings from my job, and you have to. And so I always, if I had a call that kind of reminded me of something, I just kind of put it in the back of my mind, and I just did my job, and then later on I would think about it or not deal with it or whatever. So that's a huge risk factor for other people. If you experience multiple traumatic events in such a close period of time, that's going to mess with your psyche. I mean, that's just straight up forward. That's going to mess with your psyche. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You cannot witness multiple traumatic events in such a short period of time and not be affected. Whether it's cardiac arrest, or we always hear people talk about the black cloud, or Black Death, or whatever you want to refer to it as. Like if someone comes and to work at your station, and they have 5 shifts in a row where there's like cardiac arrest and someone dies, you start messing with someone and kind of just kind of ribbing them a little bit. But on the other end of it, it's like we don't look at the person that we're saying this stuff to, because that could really mess with your psyche, because they might start thinking, oh man, like, am I really like the touch of death? Like, is that what is that my job? And I know that some people probably listening to this right now are like, yeah, okay, that's not really happening, but that's not really what they think. But it is, because I've heard a story from someone that's not personally close to me, but from like personally close to someone else I knew, and that's what they had, is that they had a problem where they were literally running calls every shift where people were dying on them, and people at the firehouse were like, hey, what's up, Dr. Death? Hey, what's up, Black Death? What's up, Grim Reaper? And to them it was a joke, but to that person it was really messing with their psyche. They were really freaking out, thinking, holy crap, am I the Black Death? Like, so you have to really think about that. On the other side of it is like, the words that we use to people, what was the other one? Oh, that's what it was. Underlying mental health issues. If you have any underlying mental health issues, this job it could be challenging. Because you're going to see things that are going to trigger certain mental health issues that you have. And I'm talking about anything like as simple as just depression. I struggle with depression, and I've struggled with it a long time. And for the longest time, I didn't think I had depression. And I would be like, I'm fine. I don't need anything. I don't need meds. I'm good. But I dealt with it in other ways, which I'll get into in a little bit more. But underlying mental health issues are a huge thing too. Think about somebody that may have come back from combat, from the military, and then joined the fire department. They come back from combat seeing some things, and they come to the fire department. There's some things that they're already coming into that they're not technically dealing with. And those are the things that we have to deal with. So we have to really, really look at ourselves, but also really, really look at the people that we're working with and find out what we need to do to help. What we need to do to be there for everybody. So let's talk about some symptoms of PTSD before we get into some personal things. But so symptoms of PTSD, and I got this information from the Department of Veteran Affairs, but I did some more research into it, and honestly, the symptoms of PTSD, they don't change whether you're a veteran or whether you're a first responder. It doesn't change. They're the same symptoms, just different scenarios. But reliving the event, memories of that traumatic event, it literally can come back at any time. And for me, that actually happened not too long ago. I was actually having a dream, and I didn't know what the dream was about. And I was at the firehouse, and I had a dream, and I didn't know really what the dream was about, but I know that dream there was a lot of deep and heavy things in there. And I woke up in the middle of the night from this dream, and my heart was pounding. And then once I kind of really, the next day I started really thinking about what that dream meant, and it actually was a dream relating to a call that I had several years back when I used to work up in my old apartment in Illinois. And I didn't really realize what it was, but somewhere in my brain it was bottled up. Somewhere in my brain it was kind of just sitting there lingering. It was a thought that I had, but I just pushed it too far back. And for some reason in this dream, it came back. And like I said, I didn't know what it was. It took me to the next day when I really started thinking about that dream, going, what did that dream even mean? And then it kicked in. I was like, whoa, I was reliving that event. And that a lot of people have that. A lot of people have nightmares, or they have, just bad dreams in general. You hear things about, soldiers coming back from Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever they're at in the combat zone. You hear about them coming back and they'll wake up in the middle of the night sweating, having night terrors because of maybe something that they were dreaming about, or and this is reliving the experience. This is not a nightmare, but 4th of July. I know 4th of July is a big one for a lot of people that saw combat. 4th of July is a big time of the year. There's actually a campaign out there right now for 4th of July regarding setting off fireworks if you live near a veteran. And a lot of people look at that and just okay, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. But the truth is, it's real. That is 100% real, because even the simplest thing like a firework on 4th of July can trigger somebody. And for people in the first responder realm, whether you're a police officer, dispatcher, or paramedic, firefighter, it really anything can trigger it. You may have had a bad call with a child before, and all it takes is you have one call where you had a close call with the child, and it could trigger something. Or maybe you had a personal death in the family, and you had to go to a call that was similar like that. Or God forbid you ever had to go to a call of a family member or someone that's really close to you. That type of stuff could really play tricks with your minds. So reliving an experience is something, and that's kind of other reasons that we have to, really deal with these things when we go through them. That's why we have to debrief. That's why we have to have, what I don't know what your fire department has, but that's why we have to have things in our fire department, like chaplains, or whether you believe in whatever you believe in God or not. Chaplains are great people to talk to. They're great people to talk to just to get that information out there and be like, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, and they may have some good information for you. Or just, if the fire department has an EAP program. I mean, EAP programs are the greatest thing. I use it with our department, to go speak to someone, because in order for me to, I guess, kind of move forward from a lot of these things, I need to talk. I want to talk to somebody. I don't need to. I do need to, but I want to. And I'm a firm believer that, family members are not people that you need to push this on, because, last thing you need to do is be coming home and pushing this information on your, wife or children or whatever. They don't need to know this stuff. They don't need to know some of this. They just need to know, like, yeah, if you had a bad day, you had a bad day. And then, hopefully they understand that. But we don't need to go in detail with them. That's kind of why, like, counselors are good. And if you have an employee assistance program, that's awesome. It's phenomenal. I hope you use it. And if you don't, I sincerely encourage you to look into it. We have a great EAP, and, it's awesome. It's a good tool to have. We kind of talked about it with avoiding situations that remind you of the event. And like I said, that is just basically trying to find triggers, trying to find things that, like if you've seen combat and you're a veteran, and, that fireworks are going to trigger you, don't go to a fireworks show, don't go buy fireworks and light them off. Like if you know these are triggers, try to keep yourself away from that type of stuff. This is a big one for me, which is negative changes in beliefs or your feelings. Because when you deal with stuff, whether it's traumatic or just anxiety, stress, changing like a negative or having a negative attitude, towards things, it's very easy to do. And I'm working on that myself, and that's kind of one of the reasons that I do talk to somebody, because you need to change it. And I'll be the first to admit, and like I said, this is a very transparent podcast episode for me. And I'll be the first to admit I am a negative person a good amount of the time. And it's not that I want to be. I don't want to be a negative person. I try with everything to not be a negative person. I want to wake up every day and have, like, whatever you want to call it, the Mr. Rogers, type of walking through the neighborhood. I would love to have that type of feeling, but unfortunately there's days that I just wake up that I can't, I don't feel it. And, that's something that you need to get addressed, and you work through that by, talking to someone and bringing that forward. You have your good days, you have your bad days. You may have days where you wake up in a great mood, and you have a couple hours where you're just like, yeah. And I have that too, and I don't want that. I really don't. It's just, unfortunately, it's something that happens, and it's something that I'm trying to control, but it takes time to control. And I think the biggest challenge to that, or hurdle to that, is other people understanding that. Other people understanding that, listen, I'm not sure, like, I don't want to be negative. I know you don't see that, but I don't want to be. And that's something you really have to work on. You really have to change. So, I just lost my place. I'm sorry. Looking back into it, but like you need to, whatever ways possible, you need to figure out. You need to figure out, like, how to deal with that negativity. Whether it's you just need to take some time in the morning or take some time in the afternoon and just, get away and just kind of like clear your mind by yourself. I mean, hey, that's better than nothing, you know. That is 10 times better than nothing. I'd rather try to get up like 30 minutes earlier and be able to sit quietly before I go to work, you know, than scramble in the morning to get to work, already stressed out, and then get to work and you're like, God, like I that's not what I like to do. I try to get up early every shift, or every day I go to shift. I try to get up early and have a little bit of time to kind of debrief myself, and I think it's very important for you to do that. But so the other word, or the other thing they have is called feeling keyed up, as they also call it. It's called hyperarousal. And get your mind out of the gutters. It's not that type of thing. But it's basically if you've ever felt like jittery, you know, or like always alert, always looking out for danger. And I'm not talking about, you know, you kind of scan the room at a restaurant, you know, seeing what's going on. I think everyone should do that, but I'm talking about like, you know, you're jittery, you're looking out for just any type of danger at any like corner that you turn. These are all symptoms of PTSD. So this kind of gives you something. You gotta, whether you deal with it or whether you are someone who works with someone who's going through this, you have to look out for some of these symptoms. You have to look out for these things because the biggest thing, and if there's anything that somebody can get out of this podcast from me, it's this. Someone that's dealing with stress, anxiety, or PTSD, or any form of that in the fire service, or even in just life in general, if you have someone that's dealing with that, you have to know that they're not going to come up to you and ask for help. They're not going to come up to you and be like, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Unless you are super close friends, no one's going to really come up and do that in the fire service because we have this stigma. We have this aura around the fire service that you cannot talk about your feelings. And that is the truth. That is the 100% truth. So I think what we need to do is we need to really, as a whole, we need to stop that and we need to look out for each other. You know, this I named this episode, you know, look out for each other, or look out for each other's back, because you have to. There's people that are not going to speak up and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. You know, there's a cartoon kind of like poster. There's a guy that does a bunch of things for fire departments, and there's one where it has two guys standing next to each other. The other guy has his head is replaced with a grenade with little, you know, it says tick, 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 tick all around it. And the guy right next to him is saying, man, you are super strong. I don't know how you do it. And there's people in this fire department that we can, or in your fire department, that you can probably go, man, that person is like super strong, but no one knows what that person's dealing with. No one. Recently, the Chicago Fire Department and the Chicago Police Department on the same day lost a police officer and a firefighter that committed suicide. And everybody that I read articles of people being interviewed, and every single person that knew them said that they would never think that person would ever do that. They said that they never thought about it. You know, it is one of those, you know, they seemed happy yesterday, and then all of a sudden this news came out, you know, or hey, I was hanging out with that person yesterday and there was nothing, you know, and then all of a sudden today I heard this. You don't know what people are going through, and people are not going to talk to you because they don't feel that that anything's going to come out of it. Maybe, you know, you look at even the celebrity side of it. I know people talk about the celebrities, but you look at the celebrity side of it recently. You know, you had two celebrities. You had, you know, Kate Spade, who's the, you know, known designer for women's handbags, and then you had Anthony Bourdain, the chef. And you have these two prominent people. I mean, I was having a conversation with somebody about Kate Spade, and Kate Spade sold her business for $4.9 billion. And right there, it shows that like money does not buy happiness. Money literally does not buy happiness. Happiness is happiness. And how you get to that happiness, that's a whole different thing. And I don't know the secret to it. I really don't. I don't know how to get to, that secret happiness of life. And I hope I would love to. I hope I would know that one day, but I don't know it right now. But that just shows you right there. I mean, you have someone that had, $4.9 billion in the bank from selling her company, and she literally was struggling with stuff so bad that taking her own life seemed like the smart decision at the time. And then you have these firefighters, and I don't know what this firefighter or this police officer from Chicago went through. I don't know what they saw. I don't know their calls that they saw, but was it firefighter related? Was it not? Were there signs that they were giving people? Because yes, people do these interviews and say, I was just with him yesterday and he didn't give me anything. Well, were you looking? You have to, if you're not looking for these symptoms, do you really even know what you're looking for? That's my question. So how do you manage PTSD? Actually, before I get into managing PTSD, I did tell you at the beginning of this podcast that I plan on being transparent, and I really mean that. And so, a little bit about me and what I've dealt with. So I got into the fire service back in 2001, and I was 19 years old, and my first death that I saw wasn't until I was 20 years old. So I went through like a whole year without even really seeing anything traumatic. And with my fire department, I went to a call one day. I was training with the fire department, and we went to a call, and it was for a cardiac arrest. We went in, we started doing our jobs. The family was there; they're hysterical. We started rolling to the hospital. We're doing CPR the whole way there. And inside the ER, they decided to call it. And we were in the ambulance on the way back, and then all of a sudden, it kind of clicked. I was looking at the name of the person on the information, and all of a sudden it clicked. And it was actually somebody that I knew. But I had such tunnel vision to go do my job that I didn't even recognize who it was. So my first call that I ever saw anything traumatic, it was somebody that I knew. And that was really hard. That was really hard for me to deal with. And I didn't really know how to deal with it. So I did what everyone else was doing. You bottle it up and you put it back, you put it back in your little back pocket, or you put it back in the back of your mind somewhere. And I continued to do that throughout my career. There's some things that I saw in paramedic school that were, they're tremendously awesome things. I got to see, as much as people say, you do not want to see it. I got to see multiple, babies being born, which is an amazing freaking thing to see. But then on the flip side of it, you go the next week and all of a sudden you're seeing, like death and, bad things. I think the worst was the ER. When we were doing our ER clinicals is there was a little 5-year-old boy that was brought to the ER and ended up actually passing away inside the ER. And to see that and to see the sadness and the look on the family's face was devastating. It was devastating to see that, even though I didn't really even physically go in that room. To be outside of that room was literally devastating to see that, And then, progressively through my career, I've seen a bunch of death. I've seen a bunch of stuff. I've tried to save people's lives and failed, or not failed. I wouldn't want to say failed, but, there was people that we couldn't bring back. There was people, whether they were shot or cardiac arrest. So the thing is like you lead up to these things. And I tended to bottle things away for the longest time. And I turned to drinking for the longest time as well. And for me, drinking was the best way to relieve this pain, because for me, drinking numbed the pain. If it was something I was thinking about, or if I was stressed out, I drank. And I used that as my crutch for the longest time. And fast forward a bunch of years. So when I came down to South Carolina for my job, I came down to South Carolina and I wanted to, I wanted to be the best firefighter I possibly could be. I wanted to move up the ranks in this fire department. But I also didn't realize that I came down here and I brought the demons with me. I brought all that stuff that I bottled up up in Illinois. I bottled it away, and I never thought about it, but it came with me. And there was really nothing that I did to take care of that. And a couple of years ago, I was actually really going through a really tough time where I was driving home from work several times, and I want to clarify this, I never attempted anything. But I had those thoughts in my head of just, I just can't do this anymore. I cannot deal with the stress. I cannot deal with this mental, this mental struggle. I cannot deal with this anxiety. I can't deal with any of this stuff anymore. And I was trying to find all these different ways. And when I went to the firehouse, people would ask me, "Hey, what's going on, man? Is anything wrong?" And I'd be like, "No, everything's good." Some people did recognize there was a difference in me. Some people didn't. But I didn't want to talk about it. I was too afraid to talk about it until one day I actually talked to someone who actually was dealing with similar things that recommended me to a counselor. And that's when I really went and was like, man, I need to talk about these things. I need to release these things out. But also at the time, I didn't realize there was a lot of programs in our state for, firefighters. There's firefighters assistance programs that are all over the state for, firefighters that are, or for even first responders that are dealing with things where they need to talk to somebody. There's 24-hour hotlines where you can talk to a counselor over the phone, and, they'll take as much time as they want. And there was a lot of these things that I didn't know about. And it wasn't until I really started dealing with these issues is when I really, really started to not only find the love for my business, but also find the love for myself. So the whole point of this is that there isn't any weird stigma with getting help. There isn't any weird stigma with talking to somebody. And for the longest time, I thought about that. I thought about, I can't talk to anybody. They're going to think I'm weak. I can't talk to this person. They're going to think I'm pathetic, or I don't want to talk to somebody because what happens if like all these emotions come flowing out of me and, they're like, oh God, this guy's crying. I've learned to just say, screw it. I don't care. I don't care if someone knows my struggles. I don't care if someone knows that this is what I'm dealing with. If all these emotions come out of me and there's a couple tears, who cares if you see me? I literally got to the point where I don't care. Because to me, to be happy in life is more important than walking through life struggling and having anxiety and being stressed out with every single little detail of your life. And I'm not saying that everything is fixed overnight, because you always have those things. You have those struggles of bills. You have those struggles of, work-related things. It's just it's a process of how you deal with it. So the whole point of this podcast today is to kind of really, really give people an insight into my life a little bit, to be transparent and let you know what I've dealt with, and hopefully this is something where people will go, okay, you know what, maybe I can go talk to somebody, maybe I should go talk to somebody. It doesn't hurt. There is nothing wrong with going to speak to somebody. Which brings me to like different ways that you can manage your PTSD. So the National Center for PTSD, one of their biggest things that they tell people is that if you have PTSD, or I even say even if you just have like work anxiety, work-induced anxiety, even if you have that type of stuff, they recommend setting goals for your treatment. Okay. Basically, like they're basically telling you to reduce your PTSD symptoms, learning how to live with them. Okay. Try to improve your professional and personal relationships. And then one of the biggest things is they talk about speaking with a therapist. You know, there isn't anything wrong with that, you know. But some of the main treatments that the National Center for PTSD talks about is cognitive therapy, exposure therapy. They call eye movement desensitization. Jeez, that is a word that I obviously can't say. Group therapy, family therapy, and then last resort, if you need to, is medications. I'm personally trying to deal with this stuff without medications. I don't want to go on them, so I'm basically trying to kind of, I guess you could do more cognitive therapy. I'm trying to talk to somebody, learning how to reduce my stress, learning what to do if I do get in a situation, and not every treatment for everyone is different. I mean, every treatment is different for somebody. So what works for one is not going to work for the other, and that's kind of where you just need to go reach out and you need to go talk to somebody and have somebody really help you through this. But the reason I wanted to do this podcast today, I was trying to think of an episode to do, and especially because Sean wasn't here, I wanted to think about something that I can be very passionate and talk about, and something that kind of played out. And then I didn't realize today was National PTSD Awareness Day, and somebody posted it on Facebook this morning, and I said, well, that's a sign. Like, that's what I need to talk about. This is something that I truly, truly believe in, and this is something I truly, truly want to see an end come. And not just to the fire service side, but I want to see an end of this PTSD and even suicides in the veteran community, you know, and even all over the world for that matter. It's not even just about veterans or firefighters. I mean, it's about every single person, you know. People look at it, and despite what your views are of people, you know, I don't ever want to see even a celebrity, you know, deal with that. We've seen a lot of celebrity suicides, you know. Look at Robin Williams. Look at, Heath Ledger was more of an overdose, but he kind of knew what he was doing. But Robin Williams, Chester Benningfield from Linkin Park. You look at all these people and you kind of wonder why, what was going on in their world, making all this money and being known. What was going on in their world that made them do this? So we need to really, really find a way to get past this, and we really need to find a way to deal with this. And I don't know what that solution is, but all I know is that it needs to be figured out. And it's not going to be figured out by sitting back. It's not going to be figured out by bottling inside, and it's definitely not going to be figured out, you know, by people making fun of it or by people pushing it to the wayside thinking it's a joke, because it's really not. You know, I'm sorry to say it, but it is really not. And that is something that absolutely bothers me is, you know, people thinking that it is, you know, it doesn't affect me. No, but it could affect anyone in your family, and you don't know that. And if you have somebody that you've been affected by personally that has committed suicide, you know what I'm talking about. It's not a fun thing. It's a very sad, shocking thing to even see happen. So I encourage everyone here to, you know, do a little more research into, you know, PTSD and stress and, the firefighter suicides. And I just encourage you, if you know someone struggling, please talk to them. Encourage them to get help. If you are struggling with something, I encourage you, if you work for a fire department, I encourage you to talk to your fire department and find out if you have an EAP program, or if you have anywhere, or if you don't, like South Carolina has several different places that you can go, that you can call. You know, we have the FAST team, which is from our South Carolina Firefighters Association. The FAST team is a group of people all over the state that are there to help people that are stressed out. People that are going through some trials, whether it's from a death in the fire department all the way to just normal stress-related calls. There's many options out there, and I know there's places in your state. There's suicide prevention hotlines. There's all that type of stuff. So I encourage you, if you're struggling with something, please go get help. please go talk to somebody. Talk to a friend, talk to a pastor, talk to whoever. Just talk to somebody. Because there is so much worth living for still that your mind is going to try to trick you and bring you a different way, especially if you're dealing with such traumatic past experiences. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me on this episode, and if you guys have any more questions, you can go to our Facebook page and ask any questions or message me directly, and I will also post some things on there that you guys could, some links that you guys could go find some information for you. So I hope you guys have a great day, and we will see you next time on Into the Fire Podcast. See you later.